Well, thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on Eon this Thursday morning. Now, in 2007, Tiger Brands was charged with a 98.8 million rand fine after working with competitors to fix the price of bread. Now, price fixing, which is known to be a criminal and corrupt act, has been having a negative effect on communities and consumers, as well as the economy at large. And of course, who better suffers than the actual small business in itself and the overall market? So, the practice, right, involves actual competitors who collude with one another whether or not to sell products below a certain price. So to expand further on the effects of price fixing and how exactly it affects mine and your pocket, this morning we're joined by the Deputy Commissioner of the Competition Commission of South Africa, Hardin Ratshisusu. And of course, to be part of our conversation this morning, you simply dial 011 447 1742 or 2570. Alternatively, leave your comments on our Facebook as well as on our Twitter pages. Hardin, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you and good morning.
Now, perhaps really to kick off our conversation, we perhaps need to understand exactly the role of the Competition Act in itself and exactly what does it do to help or prevent certain instances like price fixing.
Yeah, this is the law that was passed in 1998. Is the Competition Act administered by the Competition Commission of South Africa.
Yeah,
it's a very important piece of legislation in a new transition to democracy, because it's very important that we have competitive markets in our economy. Why competitive markets? You need those markets to ensure that consumers get fair prices of any products or services that they buy.
And of course, we're speaking about price fixing this morning. Perhaps really the question would be, have you identified those sectors of industry where price fixing is quite prominent? We're speaking about the case of Tiger Brands of 2007, but now we're in 2017, 10 years on. Surely you've identified certain sectors of industry which are not letting down.
We are quite busy on this front as the Competition Commission. You'll recall, I think Tiger Brands, the bread cartel, was quite prominent then.
Yeah.
Since then, we have looked at many other cases. Construction, a cartel, where
they paid, I think, millions, hundreds of millions of rands as a result of these.
Yeah, over 1.5 billion in penalties.
Yeah.
So you would have those big cases. And last year, we settled another big case in the steel sector involving ArcelorMittal. Again, the ArcelorMittal paid 1.5 billion rands. So these are very, very big cases.
Let's get this straight. This price fixing is illegal, correct? Or is it unethical? Because if it's, where do we sit really in terms of the legalities of it? Is it legal, illegal, or is it unethical?
I think it's both. But in terms of the law, this is something that businesses must not do.
Yeah.
And since last year, the country passed another amendment to the Competition Act, which criminalizes the conduct, which means that going forwards, if we find that individuals at a senior management were involved, they could potentially face a jail time.
And we're having this conversation specifically because in often cases we often harp on about corruption within the public sector and how public sector corruption is on the rise. But we don't speak really in depth about corruption within the private sector and the effects thereof that it has on the actual consumer or the Republic of South Africa in its whole. So when we're looking at those, do you think that just being able to find some of those companies that have been through price fixing, construction being one of them, do you go back now and say, guys, we're going to charge you now and arrest you?
What has happened, I think, before last year, it was just not allowed for firms to do this.
Yeah.
So there were no particular ramifications on individuals. So now there's an amendment act that has been passed, which means that in future we would consider pursuing individuals for this particular conduct.
But that means that the guys that were involved in price fixing before ran away scot-free. Well, with paying a fine.
I think, of course, the fines have been very, very, very stiff. We were, of course, applying the applicable law at the time. So I think the law only looked at the firm, and I think these are changes that we welcome because you are right. I mean, this is a very, very bad conduct.
Absolutely.
When firms scheme and fix prices, they affect consumers.
I want us to hold that because we're going to talk about how they affect consumers, how they affect small businesses, as well as the retribution there. Are we still taking your calls this morning? We've got a caller on the line. I believe it is Neo. Neo, good morning to you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And you, Neo?
I've got two questions. One is, you buy a cold drink. It's written 8 rand, but you find that the person who's selling is selling for maybe 12 rand. But on it's got a second. It's written 8 rand. And number two, I normally go to the spares to buy some spares. Let's say I buy a windscreen for 250, and I go to another space around in the location. You find that the person has tripled the price. Maybe he's selling that windscreen for maybe 600. So I just want to ask, what is happening? Can they help us there?
Very good question there, Neo. Thank you so much for that. So the effects of price fixing on the consumer in itself. For example, Neo having to undergo different prices, same item.
Yeah, I think the first question is asked. It's a different type of conduct. It's a conduct that's called resale price maintenance, and it's not allowed in terms of the law. But what's allowed is if a supplier, in this case, I suppose a soft drink supplier, is allowed to recommend a price as long as that price is known, it's written on the item. So there is really nothing wrong. This is to empower the consumer.
Absolutely.
So once the consumer sees that the recommended price is 8 rand and they are forced to pay 12 rand, I think consumers should shop around, because we also encourage consumers to shop around, because that's how competition happens. They should look at other alternatives. To his second question, again, if you find such a supplier, it becomes a big problem if that's the single supplier, meaning that that supplier is dominant. So if this is the supplier that is doing that, there would be no alternative to tend to. But now he seems to have enough information about the product that he knows that this is obviously, for example, the price has been tripled, which means that he can shop around. We encourage consumers to be informed. We encourage consumers to shop around so that where firms want to exploit them, there is no gap for that.
We're going to talk a little bit more about the shopping around as well, and perhaps see exactly what we can do as consumers to empower ourselves. But I'm going to bring in Mark into this conversation. We've got some comments coming in from Facebook just regarding the issue at hand. Mark, what are some of the questions that are coming out?
Yeah, what we ask is, since price fixing is a criminal and corrupt act, do you think it's enough for companies found guilty of this act to simply face a fine? Some of the comments are as follows. Vuyo saying they should get more than a fine. Company must also, along with the fine, be put out of business for a specific period determined by those authorized to do so. Daniel saying these companies think they are above the law. They should be closed and managers should be arrested. South Africa has high unemployment, so I think the law must be hard on these companies. And then Shimza Chulwani saying the way this thing is so common in South Africa, even Somalia tuck shop owners fix airtime pricing, adding 50 cents or 1 rand on top of that. So those are some of the comments coming through on Facebook.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Very interesting questions indeed. In fact, it's one of our questions as well this morning regarding small businesses, right? So let's say that it is a spaza shop and they are seen to be, raising prices. How then do you protect yourself as a consumer, and what laws govern those small or even informal businesses that might be wanting to raise the prices?
Yeah, so of course, businesses, small, big, are free to trade in South Africa. So we are a free country. This is a democracy. Of course, there are also laws applicable. And I think today we are talking about price fixing. If a consumer suspects that businesses, however small or big, are fixing the price, meaning that they agree, what's important is for businesses to agree to fix that price. So if you have some information that points to that, such act would be deemed illegal. And that is something that should be reported to the Competition Commission. So businesses, however big or small, they are not allowed to talk amongst themselves to fix or determine prices. that ought to be an individual decision of that particular business.
So you hear it, everybody. It's illegal and it is now criminal as a result of such. There, we have to leave our conversation there this morning, Hardin. But thanks a lot for joining us, there, informing us as consumers and perhaps protecting our well-being when it comes to the various purchasing powers that we actually have. Speaking to Hardin Ratshisusu from the Competition Commission, joining us this morning. It is just about 7 o'clock, which means it's time to hand you over to Mark Chase. He's standing by to give you the news in English. Stay